Alright everyone, welcome back again to some more Umineko. I know I say this a lot, but during the times I would read this visual novel, play it, what have you, I'm always like expecting something to happen, and you know, the way the developers created this game, they made it so that everything happened at a proper, nice pace. Nothing was rushed. And as of this video, everything hits the fan hard, and it's just, I don't know how to take it, because we all saw it coming, and now that it happened, it's just so heartrending, man. And without saying much, guys, I'll let you all see for yourselves, because this is big. So if anything else, hope you all continue to enjoy. Let's get right back into it.
二人とも早朝からご苦労様でした。
Natsuki, acting as though the releasing tension had caused a new surge in her headache, left the parlor. Kanon tried to call her as she left, but Natsuki departed swiftly.
どうした？まだ何かあるのか？
はい。旦那様方のお姿を見つけることはできませんでしたが。
Kanon sounded evasive. He still didn't know where they were, but maybe he had found something with some relation to that. When Ava and Hideyoshi noticed this exchange of words, they came over. They had probably noticed the slightly strange way Kanon was acting.
どうしたんや、カノン君。クラウス兄さんたちは見つかったんか？
実は、バラ庭園の倉庫の様子がおかしいのです。
様子がおかしいというのはどういう意味だ？
それが、何と説明すればいいのか。
Kanon once again hesitated. He wasn't speaking anything like you'd expect from the usually fearless Kanon. Ava and Hideyoshi exchanged quizzical looks at this display.
どういうこと？倉庫の中に兄さんたちがいたんじゃないの？
いえ、中はこれから調べます。その鍵を取りに戻ったところなのですが。
ようわからんが、とにかく中を調べればいいだけの話やないか。その倉庫の鍵はどこにあるんや？
使用人室にあります。すぐに中を確かめましょう。
Kanon dashed off to the servant room and returned with the key. Genji left the parlor saying that he would go check, but Ava and Hideyoshi also followed. What was this? Something odd about the storehouse that had caused the usually fearless Kanon to hesitate. It was still pouring outside, but their curiosity over this something that Kanon couldn't talk about won out. While the children made a big fuss watching the television, Kanon and the rest dashed off to the entrance. The Rose Garden storehouse was a place that housed various tools used to manage the garden. It was definitely not a pretty building. Because of its appearance, it had been built hidden in a corner of the Rose Garden. Kanon, Genji, Ava, and Hideyoshi came cutting across the Rose Garden holding umbrellas. They entered a small path just off the Rose Garden, which was not used by those simply appreciating the garden, but only by those maintaining it. As they dashed further along it, the front of the storehouse came into view. It was a very old shed of a storehouse, and compared to the flawlessly perfect beauty of the Rose Garden, it was pretty seedy looking. It was easy to understand why it had been built in a hard-to-see place. Ava and Hideyoshi arrived at the storehouse long after Kanon and Genji.
カノン君たちは早いな。わしは心臓が爆発しそうや。
こんなところに倉庫なんか建ててたのね。何よそれ！
When Ava looked at where Kanon was pointing, she was at a loss for words. Noticing this, Hideyoshi also followed Kanon's finger and was likewise too shocked to speak. The entrance to the storehouse was kind of a shutter. And there, everyone there now understood why Kanon had been unable to find words that could describe what he saw. On the shutter, which was completely filthy from being exposed to wind and rain for so long, plastered on it. Ooh, that's a bad sign. Something that looked like a strange dark red liquid. Mucus. Or maybe it was some sticky paint. Some kind of ghastly substance had been used to draw an indescribably eerie shape. The rain had caused it to drip down in several places like fresh blood leaking from an open wound. There was no longer any point in being choosy with words. A ghastly dark red substance meant to look like blood had been used to draw some kind of figure or mark, intended to suggest something ominous. 2 concentric circles were drawn there, and inside them was a design that looked like a cross. The 4 ends of the cross were widely exaggerated, and it looked like some kind of crest from somewhere around Europe. And in the cracks between those shapes, written closely packed together, were some unfamiliar characters, or possibly symbols.
なんちゅう悪趣味な落書きや。これ、あれか？悪魔の儀式とかの魔法陣いうやつとちゃうか？
Hit the nail on the head, dude. With reference to this ghastly shape drawn with deep red, dripping substance, Hideyoshi's comparison was not unreasonable.
これいつ書かれたの？
昨日、雨が降り出す前にここに来ましたが、その時には何も書かれてませんでした。
他の方々の目に触れる前に何とかしよう。ご覧になられたらご不快になられるだろう。
そうね。ただの倉庫小屋とはいえ、こんな気持ち悪い落書きを1秒たりとも放置したくないわ。
倉庫の中に塗料もあります。応急処置でとりあえず塗り消して後日天気のいい日に改めて塗装しましょう。
Genji remembered that he had just recently seen another piece of graffiti and that it too had been made with a strange dark red substance of the same color as this. That must have been... That's right, he had seen it on the door to Natsuhi's room.
加納君、さっさとこの落書きを消して戻りましょう。たとえ倉庫とはいえ、実家の落書きは本当に腹立たしいわ。
はい、すぐに済ませますので。
Kanon squatted in front of the shutter and unlocked it. He then lifted it up with all of his strength. A boisterous noise resounded, and an eerie shape drawn on the shutter began to get sucked in through the top of the shutter as the shutter was raised. At least for the time being, the ominous thing disappeared from their direct gaze, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to a kids program that they had come across, Maria was feeling much better. Battler and Jessica were making fun of the kids program at every turn, cackling. George was enjoying the program along with Maria. Nanjo sat on the sofa by himself, passing the time by reading quietly. They heard hurried footsteps coming from the hallway. They were footsteps from a single person. Did that mean that it wasn't the group of 4 that had just left? Genji was the one who had returned. It was very rare for Genji, who had considered being out of breath a violation of a servant's virtues, to be gasping for air. He had probably come dashing back from outside the mansion. His shoulders were soaking wet and he didn't have his usual smart appearance. When Genji noticed Nanjo looking at him, he gave a small silent bow and quickly approached him.
南條先生、申し訳ございません。至急お越しください。何事ですかな。
As Genji whispered something to Nanjo's ear, Nanjo's face changed color. Oh, don't tell me something happened to Natsuhi. He stood from the sofa, trying not to be noticed by the children who were still engrossed by the TV, and the 2 of them rapidly left the parlor, muffling their footsteps. Just as they were leaving the parlor, they came across Natsuhi, who was pushing a serving cart loaded with a tea set. Oh, okay, she's safe still. Genji whispered something to Natsuhi's ear, and Natsuhi's face too changed color, shocked. Then, leaving the serving cart where it was, the 3 of them started dashing towards the entrance. Oh no, okay, that's even worse. So when they opened the shutter, they probably saw the bodies of the parents. George noticed them running down the rose garden through the window.
なんだろう。源氏さんと南條先生と、あれは夏日おばさんかな。
どうしたんだよ、兄貴。
何かあったのかな。ひどい慌てようだったね。
Jessica and Maria also realized that something had happened from the fact that Eva, Hideyoshi, and Nanjo were no longer in their seats. And because the serving car had been abandoned at the entrance to the parlor.
何か事故でもあったとか？
行ってみようぜ。俺たちだけのけ者なんて面白くねえしな。
For some reason, what Battler said sounded extremely indiscreet, but they couldn't deny that they were a little insecure and concerned after seeing the adults run off into the rain disregarding their appearance.
行ってみようぜ。何があったか気になるぜ。
Jessica's insecure words spoke for all of them.
おい、マリア。お前も来るか？それとも、テレビを見てるか？
マリアはテレビがいい。
Good. Stay at home where it's safe and watch your TV.
僕たちだけで行こう。マリアちゃん、すぐ戻るからね。テレビを見て待ってるんだよ。
By the time the kids went outside, they had lost sight of the adults who had left earlier. But it looked like Jessica had a pretty good idea of where they had gone from the direction they had been running. Following Jessica, they ran to the rain-soaked rose garden. It felt like the wind suddenly got stronger. The malicious sound of thunder began to ring out like it had been the previous night. It felt like something eerie had surrounded the island and was trying to stop them from moving forward.
ジェシカ、この先には何があるんだ？
確か園芸道具なんかの倉庫があったはずだぜ。
そんなところに一体何があるんだろうね。
Just as Jessica had said, a storehouse came into view in front of them. They could also see the adults there. The shutter to the storehouse was open, and several of the adults looked as though they were searching for something. For some reason, only Natsuhi was outside the storehouse, not even holding an umbrella. She was facing away from them, and it looked like she was hanging her head. The ones who had just left, Genji, Nanjo, Natsuhi, and the ones who had left before them, Kanon, Eva, and Hideyoshi, made this a large gathering of people, but there was absolutely no bustle of activity. When Natsuhi realized that the children had come, a terrible expression rose to her face, and she ran at them with her arms spread wide.
来てはいけません。お屋敷へ戻っていなさい。
However, no, because of that, the kids saw that scene which Natsuhi was trying to keep them away from. Inside the storehouse with the shutter wide open, a flickering fluorescent light shone down. And over there, Jessica's piercing shriek rang out. But that was just because Jessica's scream was the loudest. The same thing spilled out of Battler and George's mouth as well. Ava, just like Natsuhi, spread her arms and with a terrible expression roared at the kids.
ジョージ、みんなを連れて屋敷に帰っていなさい。早く、今すぐに。
When Natsuhi had spread her arms, one might have thought that she was trying to prevent them from advancing any further. However, right now, that wasn't why Ava was spreading her arms. She was trying to hide that terrible scene from the kids. It was her mother's heart, trying to protect the eyes and hearts of us children by attempting to block our view of that terrible scene by at least the width of one of her arms.
何の冗談だってんだよ。こりゃあよ。
Ah, the parents died. Oh my gosh. And they're not showing it. Ah, okay, they're showing blood. I'd seen this kind of cheap scene all too often. In manga, TV, anime, and movies. I'd seen it over and over again. This was just seeing something appear in real life that I had seen plenty of times before in some of those more sensational movies, wasn't it? That alone shouldn't... but that suit, it's that old bastard's, isn't it? I get it. And that's Uncle Kraus. And Kirei-san. And Auntie Rosa. I was honestly hoping that before the night ended, Battler would have his talk with his father. Oh, it didn't happen at all. The regrets. It's too late now.
死後硬直をほぼ全身に認められる。多分死後6時間以上は経過しとるだろう。損壊部位の状況を見る限り死後に破壊された可能性が高い。いや、めったなことは言えん。私は町医者だ。検視は専門外だ。
ちゅうことは何や。
So what I'm hearing is they need a mortuary assistant. Oh no.
殺しただけじゃ飽き足らず、 さらにこんな無体なことをしたん言うんか。悪魔や、悪魔の所業や。
Aunt Natsuki caught Jessica in her arms and Auntie Ava caught George Aniki. So I was the only one who could approach the entrance to the storehouse. If only there had been someone here to catch me too. I wouldn't have needed to have this horrible, evil scene burned into my eyes. No, that's not it. I'm standing here not because the people who would catch me aren't here, but because the people who would catch me are right there. Just as Jessica had said, it did look like a storehouse used to keep gardening tools. A lawnmower and its replacement blades, a grass sickle and a hammer, a saw and some construction tools, piled up potted plants and bags of fertilizer. And treated just the same, the corpses of several people have been laid to rest there. No, have been thrown in there. I could tell them by their clothes. That old bastard and Kirie-san, Uncle Kraus and Auntie Rosa. Further back, Goda-san, and there's still more of them. How many people died? Hell, I can't even count them on one hand. Damn it! I didn't know whether it had been one of these gardening tools which, if used for something other than their intended purpose, could definitely be wielded without naked brutality. Or whether some horrible tool had been brought in here specifically for this. Whatever the case, the bodies lying about here, each of them have been given an atrocious makeover. This isn't a damn makeover, this is more like their faces have been plowed. Their faces were smashed, forced into an expression that a normal person couldn't make even after death. I couldn't tell where the eyes or the nose were, but I could find the mouth because it was gaping wide, the ridges of the teeth exposed. But the front teeth were missing, and even the cheek that should have covered that was all torn up and exposed. The stylish makeup that he spent way too much time fussing over for a guy is no help at all. It's a good thing Maria stayed to watch TV. She should not see this.
親父！てめえは絶対地獄行きだとは思ってたぜ。でもよ、ここまでじゃねえだろ。ここまでひでえ目に遭わされるほどの悪党じゃなかっただろうがよ。だからキリエさんもさ、あんたまでそこまでの目に遭わされる理由は何もねえじゃねえかよ。顔がねえ。顔がねえよ。
Man, I can't believe that happened. They have no faces. I thought they were headless.
クソクソクソクソ。
バトラさん、これ以上見てはいかん。
It's too late now. It's embedded in his mind forever, man.
こんな姿をお父さんもお母さんもあんたに見せたいわけがない。お父さんとお母さんのためにもこれ以上見てはいかん。
死者ってのは安らかに眠る顔ってやつを拝ませてくれるんじゃねえのかよ。顔がねえんだよ。俺の親父とキリエさんの顔がねえんだよ。どういう顔して死んじまったのか、それすらもわかんねえんだよ。なんだよ俺は。親父たちのことを思い出すときはこのくちゃくちゃの化け物みてえな顔をいつも思い出せたのかよ。そいつは最高だぜ。クソ親父のニヤニヤとした顔を思い出さなくていいんだからよ。最高だぜ最高だぜ。でもよ、キリエさんの顔くらいはいいだろ。キリエさんは悪党じゃねえ。たまにはムカつくと思ったけどよ、ちょいとかっこいい俺の姉気分だったお人じゃねえかよ。こりゃねえよ。こんなのってねえよ。クロスおじさんなんかまだマシじゃねえか。顔面じゃなくて側面だぜ。少なくとも顔半分は残ってるじゃねえかよ。まだマシだぜまだマシだぜ。
This sucks. Trying to shut out my reckless words, Jessica tried to fill her ears with the sound of her own screaming.
よすんだバタラ君もうよすんだもうよすんだ
兄貴兄貴うわ
Disregarding age and appearance, I fell to my knees, clinging to Anaki's waist and sobbing. It was as if I was crying on behalf of everyone there. Representing the feelings of everyone there, I screamed over and over.
Otosan. 倒れているのはクラウスおじさん、ルドルフおじさん、キリエおばさんに、ローザおばさん、ゴーダさんで5人。
Wait, holy crap, I just remembered, what about Shannon?
いや、6人や。
Oh no!
ここにもう一人おる。
Oh crap. The body that Hideyoshi was looking down on now was hidden in the shadow of the mountain of random objects, in a blind spot to George who stood by their entrance, so George couldn't tell whose body it was. Therefore, George cursed himself. He cursed that part of himself that imagines the worst and is always right.
じゃあ、お父さんの足元に倒れているのは、シャノンなんだね。
ああ、シャノンちゃんや。
No! She didn't deserve that! George was completely silent. He shook slightly, his lower lip trembling. He wanted to run up to his beloved, screaming and crying. But, before rashly running up to her, he mustered up all his strength and asked his father.
シャノンも、クラウスおじさんたちと、同じなのかな。
Hideyoshi deeply understood the meaning of those words, so he couldn't give George a quick answer. No, he thought that, to George right now, that was the only possible sincere and loving response. When George had asked whether she was the same, he had meant to ask whether her corpse was the same as the others. Since Hideyoshi hadn't denied it, it meant that the body was just as horrible.
シャノンを見てもいいかな。
I would not advise it, sir.
いや、あかん。
どうして？だって、もう二度とシャノンの顔を見られないんだよ。その、最後の顔、どうして見たらいけないんだよ。
お前が最後にシャノンちゃんに会ったのは昨日か。
うん。
そうか。そのシャノンちゃんは、別れ際にお前にどんな顔を見せたんや。
素敵な笑顔だったよ。
After receiving the ring, she was bewildered even though her heart should have been decided. Bashful, and so embarrassed to show him that face that she ran away. That expression was revived in George's mind.
そうか。ならシャノンちゃんも、その笑顔をお前に残したいと願うはずや。
Hideyoshi looked down upon Shannon's body lying at his feet. Just like the other bodies, it was in such a horrible state that it would make anyone want to cover their eyes. Half of the face had been smashed off and no more than half of her expression remained. If that remaining half soaked red with blood had been wiped clean, that graceful smiling face might have peeked out. Only half of it. Without thinking, Hideyoshi slapped his hand over his eyes. How cruel. If only all of it had been crushed. If they were going to crush it, then he might have been able to deceive George's heart for a while by saying that it was just someone else wearing Shannon's clothes. Yet they had left half of the face. It caused the body so much humiliation, and also made it clear that this body was none other than Shannon. How inhuman. How monstrous. There, at Hideyoshi's feet, trying his best to burn the image of the remaining half of Shannon's expression into his eyes, was Kanon. Kanon was not crying. Tears had risen to his eyes, but they did not drop down. But that didn't mean that he wasn't feeling as much sadness as everyone else. Losing Shannon, who had lived with him in the gospel house, whom he had loved as a sister, must have been just the same as losing a blood relative.
ジョージ、シャノンちゃんはきっと、ありがとう言うてるぞ。お前に、恥ずかしいところを見られとうなかったんや。きっと、お前が耐えてくれたこと、感謝しとるで。
わかってる。わかってるよ、父さん。わかってるよ。
George leaned against the outside wall of the storehouse, sinking down powerlessly.
父さん、頼みがあるんだ。
なんや。
僕の代わりに見てほしいんだ。シャノンは指に指輪をつけてるかな？
指輪？ちょいと見てみる。
Hideyoshi crouched down. As he did, Kanon silently pointed to one of Shannon's hands.
ああ、あるで。こりゃ、ダイヤの指輪や。
Oh, that's even more heartbreaking. Gosh.
クズダイヤとちゃう。なかなかの値打ちもんや。
それは、どっちの手の
The left, right?
どの指にあるのかな？
The left ring finger.
と、左手の薬指や。そっか、シャノンちゃん、婚約しとったんか。
ジョージ。あなた、まさか。
エヴァ！今はそんなん関係ないで。シャノンちゃんは男に将来を約束されとったんや。一生を幸せにしちゃると男に言わせたんや。
I like Hideyoshi. I really do like him. He's a good dad.
それが誰かは問題とちゃうで。
He doesn't really care for social rules.
男にそこまで言わしめて、女の本懐やないか。
Or should I say societal rules of the privileged.
いつこの指輪をもらったんかは知らん。誰が渡したかも知らん。だが、それでも、シャノンちゃんは指輪をもらえたんや。そして、それを受け入れ、左の薬指に通したんや。指輪を送った男もきっと喜んだんとちゃうか？
To most of the people there, Hideyoshi was simply disturbed by this extraordinary situation and was blurting out strange things. But, to those who really knew the truth about George and Shannon's relationship, everything he said made sense.
そっか。ありがとう、父さん。
George stood up. The traces of tears still streaked his face, but his expression had returned to its usual calm.
行こう。バトラー君、ジェシカちゃん。これ以上、僕たちがここにいると、
そうだな。
Jessica sniffled once, and trying to say that she was alright, she showed her face to her mother, who had been holding her the whole time. When she faced George again, she once again had on her usual face, although she still couldn't recover her smile.
バトラー、しっかり。
Battler kept on crouching in front of his parents' bodies.
すまねえな。がっつり泣いたら落ち着いたぜ。親父の野郎。普段はクソクソ言ってるくせに。ちょっと死んじまったくらいでピーピー泣くんじゃねえぜって。笑ってやがれ。仕方ねえだろ。親が死んだら泣くように。遺伝子すり込まれちまってんだからよ。
Battler's face was still bright red from the tears, but even though it was forced, he had at least recovered enough to fake a smile.
カノン、お前もこれ以上ここにいてはいけません。子供たちを連れて、お屋敷に戻っていなさい。
Natsuhi, unable to take a step into the storehouse, had been standing under the rain the whole time. Maybe she had her own way of grieving, different from Battler's. She realized that she had to take on a sense of responsibility now that her husband was dead. So she gave Kanon those orders.
はい。
You know, I'm of the belief that Jessica saved her mother by giving her that charm, because the markings were also in her room, or at least the door to her room. And I assume if she didn't have any protection of sorts, it would have got her too.
奥様
Kanon rose silently and turned to face them. His face was pure white, almost as though his own heart had died along with Shannon. There was no life in his expression. If, during the course of a normal day, he had been instructed to do a tour of the beautiful rose garden, Kanon may have led the way for them. But now, there was no distinction between Kanon and the children. They were now just kids of about the same age with the wounds of having lost someone close to them. After seeing the children go back, Natsuki gave orders to Genji.
現地すぐに警察に連絡しなさい。台風が通り過ぎるまでは来られないでしょうが、どうすればいいか指示を与えてくれるはずです。
わかりました。防災用の無線機がありますので、それで連絡します。
When she heard that, Natsuki remembered. That's right, the telephones were out today, weren't they? However, since it had been assumed that there could be trouble with the phones on this isolated island, a radio had been installed. Anyway, let's contact the police and seek their instructions. Everything else can wait.
ナチョ先生、もうこの場は。
残念ながら私には何もできませんな。
わかりました。源氏、せめて主人たちの顔を何かで覆ってやることはできませんか。このような姿を晒すことは当人にとっても屈辱的でしょうから。
はい。
Genji picked up several towels hanging inside the storehouse, when Ava stopped him in a shrill voice.
ちょっとお待ちなさいよ。ここは犯行現場なんでしょ。
Alright guys, I'm gonna have to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. You know what? Things finally hit the fan. It was a great build-up because we all knew something was coming. It was just a while. In fact, it was a slow build-up. I wasn't expecting it to hit hard like this though. Like they were hinting that, you know, like the dad of Battler was gonna die. He hinted at it, and we knew it was coming. We just didn't know how it was gonna, you know, happen. And here it is now, and it's terrible. Honestly though, as gruesome as it was described, I kind of wanted to see how it looked, but it is what it is. We were given enough information. It sucks. It's gut-wrenching. And I'm glad that Maria was there watching TV, because this would have sucked if she saw this too. She's just a kid. I mean, they're all still kids at the end of the day, but terrible. But now we get to finally find out whether or not in the upcoming parts to come, if what's her name, Beatrice, will finally show up. So if anything else, guys, thank you all for watching. Until the next one.